Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, hosted by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network. Coming at you once again live on YouTube. Got myself, Bo, here with Brant, as always. And Brant, today we've got a pretty fun episode scheduled for everybody as well at home. But there's some big news that we have to talk about first. The Fantasyholics have officially partnered with Underdog Fantasy. There is some exciting things coming down the pipeline in regards to Underdog. So make sure you're paying attention to the Facebook page for details on that coming out. It'll be something that Brant and I will talk about in the near future. Very exciting stuff. So everybody make sure you are going on and checking out the details of that as they slowly release on Facebook. I know I'm excited about it, Brant. I know you are too. This is an app you and I have used for many years.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to start moving forward with this and just pay attention. Be looking for it starting hopefully this week. We'll see some more out on the page and then get it incorporated into these podcasts. This week's episode, man, it's Bust and Breakouts. It's going to be a fun one. It's one of our favorite ones to do every year. Our early Bust and Breakouts, because I'm sure we'll probably have a few more that we want to throw in there later on. But I'm ready to go. If you're ready to go, let's.
Well, I think we got to put a small warning out there for folks, because I don't want people getting confused. Because with Fatboyz, breakouts and busts could mean a few things. Busted can of biscuits, breaking out of our sweatpants. I want everybody to understand these are NFL fantasy breakouts and busts, not related to us being slightly morbidly obese. So small disclaimer there before we get into the episode, Brant.
Okay, absolutely. So let's get our bibs on.
Let's eat.
Hiya!
There you are. Been practicing your karate again, Brant. So, yeah, like you alluded to prior to the show, we're going to hit some breakouts and some busts. Probably ruffle a few feathers this week with this episode, and probably the feathers of each other as well, potentially. So these are always fun episodes, Brant.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to get it kicked off. We're going to start with our breakouts. Like you said, there's going to be some names that are going to have some people scratch their heads, have some people going, maybe I haven't thought about this. We have, a couple running backs, a couple wide receivers, and I even have a tight end thrown in. I don't know about you. I haven't seen all of yours. I know we talked about it earlier this week, but I know some names have changed as we look a little deeper into things. So I'm ready to get it kicked off. Do you want me to kick it off, or you want to?
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to go with my first one. This one here is even with the recent news of Javonte Williams being ready for week 1, I don't believe it. Samaje Perine's my breakout. He's a guy that you can get in the 11th, 12th round. He was a great handcuff to Joe Mixon. He averaged over 20 points per game when filling in for Joe Mixon last year. I understand that was only 2 games. But let's look at his upside of his pass-catching ability, his between the tackles. With this skill set, not as good as, but the skill set of an Alvin Kamara, and he's going in a Sean Payton offense. With Javonte Williams coming back off that gruesome injury, he's going to take a little time. Yeah, he may be ready for week 1, but I don't see them throwing him straight to the Wolves. Samaje Perine at the 12th round overall. Give me that all day. He's easily going to pass that one all day.
Yeah, Brent, another point to that Samaje Perine thing. Even if Javonte Williams is healthy for week 1, which I find myself on the doubting Thomas side of that as well. But even if he is, look back at Sean Payton's usage of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara when they're in the backfield. At the same time, both those guys got plenty of run rant. So yeah, I'm right there in line with you. I do think Samaje Perine in line for a good season of work again this year.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so Brant, one of my favorite breakouts this year is a guy that is being completely overlooked, in my opinion. You know, he's a member of an offense that projects to be a little bit worse this year than it's been the last few years. But that's yet to be seen. Let's not write this team off completely just yet. This player gets a big uptick in my mind because DeAndre Hopkins has left this team, Brant. So this guy should be in line for a pretty healthy pass catching work. And honestly, in his 7 healthy games last year, this guy had a pretty healthy target share. And I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, is this Marquise Hollywood Brown? No, it is actually Rondale Moore. Last year, Rondale Moore played in 7 games where he started the game healthy and he finished the game healthy. And in those games, he saw 8+ targets in 5 of the 7 games, Brant. He had a snap percentage of 86% or higher in all 7 of his healthy games, and he only recorded 1 touchdown last year. So this is a player that's in line for a positive touchdown regression or positive progression in touchdowns. He should be right back to the target numbers that he was getting. And again, Kyler Murray's not going to come in there and write the season off as a loss just because he's not going to start the season healthy. He's going to come in, he's going to gunsling, and somebody's going to catch those passes. And it's obviously not going to be D-Hop this year because he's gone. I do think Marquise Hollywood Brown has a ton of value this year as well. But Rondale Moore, where he's going in ADP and where he's at right now, and a lot of people's trade valuations, Brant, is just entirely too low. This is a guy that I know you were pretty high on him when he came out in college. And this should be the season that we finally see him live up to expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a guy that I absolutely loved, like you said, coming out of college. He's going to step into that wide receiver 2 role easily. We know that it was up and down last year for Arizona, but Arizona's going to be playing from behind like all year. I don't see their defense isn't going to stop a runny nose. We talked about Hollywood Brown a couple weeks ago. And this is another player that should step easily into it. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. So yeah, this guy is easily could be breaking out. And I know his ADP is well too low. This is one of my favorite players, like you said, one of my favorite players, and the value on him is way too low. So I'm going to roll right on over to the other Moore, Elijah Moore, Cleveland Browns wide receiver, new to the team, offensive scheme, maybe take a little time to get in. He's going into the wide receiver 2 role easily. There's nobody else that should be beating him in that. He's going to fall into the flex. This is a guy that was top 5 wide receivers in week 7 through week 13 of his rookie year. Then he had to suffer through that atrocious quarterback play in the New York Jets last year. So yeah, it was a down year. This guy, he's going in, he's getting an upgrade at quarterback. Obviously, Amari Cooper is going to see the best coverage. The deep balls are going to go to probably Peoples-Jones. And then you have this guy just underneath, Elijah Moore. I have him. He's down in the 16th round ADP is his 10th. Can't read my own writing sometimes, guys. Pen was starting to fade on me. But he's a 10th round ADP. So this is a guy that should easily pass this up. I know he's got great hands. Like I said, his speed, everything else, he could be a top 24 wide receiver by the time this year ends.
Yeah, Brant, Elijah Moore is definitely a wide receiver that there's no love lost with me. This is a guy that I've been high on really since his rookie year when he had that breakout second half of the season, his rookie year. And I think he takes a step forward. He gets out of the bad situation he was in New York, where he kind of fallen out of favor and finds himself on a team that was willing to go trade to go get him. So I definitely think this is going to be a good step. I think Deshaun Watson takes a positive step this year as well. You and I both had him in our top 10 and in our consensus rankings, he was there as well. So we think there's big things in the forecast for the Cleveland Browns, which should translate really well for Elijah Moore in the 10th round. What's not to love there?
Absolutely, absolutely. A guy that you could be stashing on your bench. And like I said, it may take a week or two for him to get used to the offense being out there at full speed. But once he gets into that offense, it should be all full steam ahead.
Absolutely. All right, Brant. Let me talk to you about this one a little bit. This one's gonna be it's gonna come from the heart a little bit. It's gonna be a little passionate here. All right. But what's to say Nico Collins of the Houston Texans can't be the wide receiver one in Houston next year? What's to say that? Does Robert Woods come into town and stop that from happening? Does Jonathan Mechie, a year removed from football, come in and stop that from happening? Does Tank Dell, the 742nd pick of this year's draft, come in and take that from happening? No, I think not. Okay, Nico Collins is coming in with a huge upgrade at quarterback in CJ Stroud over Davis Mills. Okay, I think we'd all agree that that's a pretty heady upgrade. Last season, Nico Collins had a 24.3% target share in his offense with an average depth of target of 11.9 yards, Brant. One thing we know about CJ Stroud is he's one of the most prolific deep ball passing quarterbacks of all time. He did a very good job in college of connecting on the deep ball. He liked to throw the deep ball. Now, granted, he did have the fortunate favor of some pretty darn good wide receivers at Ohio State. I won't get ahead of myself there. And maybe there's a small ounce of CJ Stroud that's like, yeah, I'm not going to go in and make this former Michigan Wolverine a stud. But if he's going to make anybody a stud there, I think it's going to be Nico Collins. And the biggest part of that, Brant, for me that I haven't shared yet is that last season, Nico Collins, out of all of his targets, had the lowest percent of catchable balls thrown to him of any starting wide receiver that had over, I think it was like 300 routes run. He had a 50% target share or catchable target rate, Brant. That is atrocious. I'm going to talk about another wide receiver when it comes to busts later. And when I put his target share out there or his catchable ball rate out there, it's really going to put into perspective just how bad Davis Mills was at throwing to these wide receivers. Nico Collins with a CJ Stroud coming in year one should have a chance to come in. He doesn't even have to be a wide receiver 2 for him to break out. He could be a healthy wide receiver 3, flex play wide receiver 4, and this is going to be a breakout season for Nico. I think the sky's the limit.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wish you would have let this guy your last breakout because it would have fed right into my first bust. But I'll get to that bust here shortly. It would have fed right on into that team. But yeah, absolutely. Nico Collins was a guy that we both loved coming out, and the only thing that could be stopping them is that little rivalry between Ohio and Michigan State. So that might be between Ohio and Michigan. That might be the only thing that stops him from being the number one there because old man Woods isn't going to do it.
I wouldn't think so.
So this is a guy that my next one is a guy I absolutely was banging the table for. I drafted him in our rookie draft last year. We didn't get to see a whole lot. His quarterback play was up and down all last year. This year it should even out. And this is a seventh round ADP. And that's Jahan Dotson for the Washington Commanders. Now he's going to get Sam Howell. Yes. So that may take a little time, but let's think about it. Dotson was banged up, played backup quite a bit last year, so he had to work with Sam Howell quite a bit last year. Sorry, animals. So he had to work with Sam Howell quite a bit during the practice squad and warming up and everything else. Once again, he's going in the 7th round. In the last 4 weeks, he out-targeted Scary Terry by 4 targets total. And we only got to see him for 12 games. He's obviously getting a huge upgrade in offensive coordinator with the enemy coming in. And in the 12 games we saw him play, he had 6 touchdowns in those 12 games. So half his games getting a touchdown. Absolutely great fantasy points. He was breaking out in the games that he did play. His separation was great on film. And I expect him to take a huge leap forward this year. And there's a chance that he may pass Scary Terry as the one in that offense.
Okay, I like it, Brant. I know you've been the biggest Jahan Dotson truther. I think I know at this point. And I know a lot of people in the community are really starting to believe in what Sam Howell brings to the table. And if Sam Howell ends up hitting, that's going to be huge for both those wideouts there in Washington. But him overtaking Scary Terry, that'd be something. I don't think you can rule it out just because of what he showed in his games last year. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in Washington. My last one, Brant, is a guy that I have found myself back and forth on so many times in the last year. Sometimes I love to be on the train. Other times it's jump off of it over a bridge of waterfall water underneath of it, and just whatever happens happens. But I'm talking about James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Um, it's hard to put a finger on James Cook just because last year you thought, hey, they've drafted these running backs year after year, and eventually one of them's going to hit. And James Cook's probably the most talented one they've drafted in the last couple of years. And I still think that's probably true, Brant. But with his size, his stature, what he is and isn't good at, he projects to be a pass catching back. Well, last year on his team, there was a running back who had far more targets than he did and a much bigger target share. And that's one of your favorite Buffalo Bills of all time, and Devin Singletary, who left this year via free agency, no longer on the team. Last year, James Cook had a target share of 6%, very low number. Devin Singletary had a target share last year of 9%, much better out of the backfield. Now, with Devin Singletary out of the picture, Damian Harris coming in, who's pretty below average pass catching running back, should project to a two-headed running back by committee between Damian Harris and James Cook, where James Cook comes in for most of the passing volume, as well as he should have somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 plus targets next year. And with all those things being, or sorry, not targets, touches, 100 plus touches out of the backfield, this guy should be in line for flexible numbers this year, and he should be the running back that the Buffalo Bills are finally looking for to alleviate some pressure off of Josh Allen and having to run the ball. I expect James Cook to finish somewhere in the RB3, low-end RB3, high-end RB4 numbers, where I think a lot of people after last year, Brant, in dynasty formats, don't know what to expect with him. I think this is a guy you could trade for very, very low this year. And his ADP is somewhere around the 13th round right now. 13th round, if you're one of those guys who believes in a zero RB format where you like to go in and snag your wide receivers and your tight ends early and then come back at low end running backs that could have high end upside, this may be one of my favorite zero running back targets this year.
Absolutely. Like you said, Singletary had 9% target share on top of the 6% that James Cook had. Well, guess what? Somebody has to take over that 9%, and it's not all going to go to Harris there, who's coming in. Absolutely. Cook's a guy that I absolutely love. I snagged him in one of our dynasty leagues this year, one of our startups that we've already done. I've looked to acquire him all over the place. And any of my keeper dynasty leagues. So yeah, this is a guy I absolutely love. This is an offense that this is the other offense in the NFL that you really want a piece of. And James Cook is probably one of my favorite pieces to go ahead and get on. But as you bring up Singletary, that will roll me straight into my first bust. Your last two breakouts will roll me right into my first bust. And this is a train that I know you have never, ever really gotten on, and that's the Dameon Pierce train. He goes as a top 20 running back, didn't even finish as a top 20 running back last year. So this guy, he's going in the fourth round, top number 20th running back off the board. He finished as running back 28. The addition of Singletary, as you just put in, as you see, I don't use his first name because I always like to mess that up. So he's not a great pass catcher. You're talking a PPR league. PPR leagues is what we're going to, half-point PPR leagues. He only averaged 5.5 yards per reception last year. Singletary, who you just alluded to, averaged 7.5. The elusiveness, Singletary goes to. The ability to miss tackles, Singletary goes to. The ability to break tackles is Pierce. He does have the ability to break them better. But to miss them, you're looking at Singletary. This is a guy, and Singletary, who I absolutely love this year, has the chance to take over this backfield easily. They don't really have a whole lot invested in Dameon Pierce. I just don't see how he can repeat what he did last year when he was the only back on the roster. Everything else was 70 years old or older with Rex Burkhead and a few other Marlon Mack who could never stay healthy. Mm-hmm. That's why Pierce got the opportunity. Well, that opportunity is not going to be as easy to get this year. And I like Singletary over Pierce, and I don't see Pierce finishing inside the top 30 this year. So if you're taking him in the fourth round as a top 20 running back, he is probably going to be one of the biggest running back busts this year.
Yeah, Brent, I think it also is worth mentioning that Lovie Smith is no longer in town. The guy that was advocating for him to, have the high number of rushes, the saying that the offense has to go through him. Um, it's now it's DeMarco Ryan, who is another product of that 49ers Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. And what does Kyle Shanahan do, Brent? He feeds the hot hand, he rotates his running backs. There's a good chance that I don't love any running back out of Houston this year, but if I had to put my money on it, it'd be really hard to put it on Pierce just because, like you alluded to, Singletary is faster, more elusive, has better pass catching work. I'd be interested to go look at the tail of the tape and see which one of them is a better pass blocker, because that's also going to be important with a rookie quarterback who's trying to figure out timing in the NFL. It very well could be a 70-30 split where we see Singletary on the field more.
Yeah, and speaking of pass blocking, you brought up the quarterback too. This is a pocket passing quarterback too. He doesn't really use his legs as much as some of the newer guys coming into the league with Richardson and Allen and Mahomes. This is a guy that Stroud wants to sit in the pocket, so he's not going to help open a whole lot of running lanes either. So the stacked boxes and everything else for Pierce are not going to be the greatest things. So everything is a downfall to him. I know I saw a report come out that he's improving his pass blocking. Well, that must mean it wasn't the greatest last year. And if you remember, Singletary was in for most of the pass blocking plays for Buffalo last year. That's why they went out and got Hines to catch the ball for them, so Singletary could stay in and block.
Absolutely, Brent. Absolutely. All right. So I talked about the Buffalo Bills a little bit with James Cook. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more here in a bust format, Brent. I'm out on Gabe Davis this year. Gabe Davis is the dictionary definition of a boom or bust player. We've seen him have weeks as the wide receiver 1 in fantasy last year, and we've also seen him as the wide receiver 64. Last year, he had an 18.2 target share with Josh Allen. Now, the Buffalo Bills did what in the draft, Brent? They split up and got who in the first? Dalton Kincaid, right? Mm-hmm. And Dalton Kincaid is going to have a massive role. The coaching staff's already come out and talked about how big he's going to be for them in the slot, lining up at tight end. He's going to be all over the field. I think Dalton Kincaid ends up being your number 2 target in this offense. And Gabe Davis takes another step back. In 11 games last year, of his games last year, in 11 of them, he was the wide receiver 3 or way worse. He had several weeks out of those 11 where he was factoring in as a wide receiver 7. So if this is a guy that you're drafting to plug in and place in your lineup, which he's going currently as the 113th player off the board, so in a 12-man league, he's going in the 9th round. Brent, you're drafting him before you fill out your lineup. So this is a guy that you're putting a lot of faith in to go out and play. And if you have him in your lineup, you're going to be very happy when he has those wide receiver 1 weeks. You're going to be really, really sad when he has those wide receiver 7, because he's going to more likely to lose you weeks than he is to win you. I'm out on Gabe Davis this year, and it may be, Brent, because I'm so in on Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, Gabe Davis, they're doing everything and anything to kind of fade him out of that offense. And that's unfortunate, because he does have the ability to be a top-end wide receiver, but he can't stay consistent. He can't stay on the field. Obviously, Buffalo doesn't want him out there. You got Kincaid, Shakur's coming on strong this mini camp. So I just don't see how Gabe Davis can maintain anything that's that he looked. I mean, and really his name, nobody really knew who he was until he blew up in the playoffs 2 years ago. Yeah, he had a few decent weeks during the season, but this is a guy that he blew up during the 3 games in the playoffs, and he's living off that hype. He's one of those players that you're living off of 3 weeks, but you're living off of 3 weeks that didn't even matter to fantasy. So my next bust is going to ruffle little feathers. Going to put a little question marks on it, and that's Devontae Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's going in the top 2 rounds. He's going as a wide receiver 7 off the board. This guy is turning 31 years old this year. Okay, let's go over a couple names. Julio Jones, AJ Green, both fell off dramatically when they turned 31. I'm sorry, I don't mean to personally attack you on that one, Bo, but they both fell off right around that age. Well, here's the other reason why Adams is going to fall off this year. And I do say, yes, he is going to fall off, not that he might. He is going to fall off. He went from Aaron Rodgers, MVP quarterback, to his best friend and his college quarterback in Carr, to Jimmy Garoppolo, who doesn't like to throw the deep ball that much. He likes to throw those short routes. Well, when you look at your short routes, it's one of those guys that you've talked about and you've pounded the table for the last 2 weeks. And I hope I'm not stepping on your toes when you're talking about breakouts. Nope, I already did breakouts. I know I'm not stepping on them. That's Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow is going to be a guy that's going to, I think, benefit the most with the Jimmy G starting. Adams just doesn't. He's unhappy with the front office. He's unhappy that he didn't get any say in the quarterback. Like I said, he's turning 31. They lean on Josh Jacobs. The short routes are going to go to Renfrow, and then you got Michael Mayer in there now. I just don't see how it's Adams to be able to repeat as a top 10 wide receiver. And this is a guy that you're drafting to be your wide receiver 1, and maybe if you're lucky, a wide receiver 2. But like I say, he's going off as the 7th wide receiver on the board, and I do not see how he can live up to that hype this year.
Brant, it hasn't happened much here in recent memory. I can't get on board with you on the Davante Adams this year. I do think the fallout's coming, and I expect it to be a very slow drip fallout that when it does happen, it'll be one of those things like you don't even notice, and then he's retired. Kind of similar to what happened to Fitzy down in Arizona. But I do think Davante Adams still has a couple years left of relevancy, although I do love the Hunter Renfrow plug. I just still think Davante Adams is a wide receiver 1 in the National Football League and in fantasy football. I still think he's going to go out and get his this year just because it's going to take Michael Mayer some time to catch and grab on. You do have all those vacated targets that are coming from Darren Waller. And, then it's relative unknowns with Jacoby Myers and, Hunter Renfrow had that one great year, but we'll see. I still think Jimmy G and that coaching staff are going to pump the ball to Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, and want him to be the focal point of this offense, opposite of, Josh Jacobs with the running game. So it'll be interesting to see, but I will tip my cap to you if you happen to get that one right. I don't own any stock of Davante Adams in any of my dynasty leagues. So if it happens, you'll see no tears shed from these eyes. I don't know if I'm ready to go and be that outlandish just yet.
Okay.
I am willing, though, however, Brant, to be outlandish on the running back 13 currently in draft formats, and that is DeAndre Swift of the Philadelphia Eagles, Brant. I am out on DeAndre Swift. You and I were both pretty well out on him last year. I just can't get on board now. And there's one really massive reason, and then there's a couple others. So let me start with a couple others first. In 5 games last year, he only had 5 games with 50% or more of the snaps. Okay, so he was relatively unused in Detroit, which is obviously why Detroit spent a first-round pick on Jahmyr Gibbs and then sent him packing for basically free to the Philadelphia Eagles. The second thing that really hurts his value in my eyes is Jalen Hurts is probably the most mobile quarterback we have in the National Football League right now. Second to Lamar Jackson, Brant. And Jalen Hurts is going to tuck the ball and take off running. He's going to throw to his tight end in Dallas Goedert or his wonderful wide receivers on the outside in Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown before he ever thinks about dumping off the ball to DeAndre Swift. Okay. And that, bear in mind, those dump off passes and the pass catching is where DeAndre Swift has made his money in the NFL and where he's made people fantasy success is by his pass catching. Now, Brent, I alluded to this just a minute ago. The massive reason that I expect DeAndre Swift to not be the running back 13 this year, which bear in mind, even if this player didn't exist, I think running back 13 is the absolute highest DeAndre Swift could get. I'm not willing to draft a player at their ceiling anyway, unless you got the 101, and then good luck because somebody's drafted at their ceiling, Brant. But running back 13 is way too high for DeAndre Swift for me because Rashad Penny exists. Rashad Penny is sucking air in that Philadelphia backfield. Rashad Penny, if he stays healthy, is a more talented player than DeAndre Swift. I know this is not news to you, Brent. You've been a Rashad Penny fan since he came from San Diego State by way of a first-round draft pick to your Seattle Seahawks some years ago. He hasn't lived up to it yet because he can't stay healthy. That's why he's no longer in Seattle. However, he's getting a fresh start in Philadelphia. And I think he's going to come out and he's going to prove some people wrong. Even if he's only healthy for 6 games, Brant, if he does in 6 games what I expect him to be doing this season, it's enough that Swift will not make it to the running back 13th, okay? Just because his volume is going to be that low in 6 games. Now, I do think Rashad Penny stays healthy. If you listen to our projections in our running back rankings show, you heard me talk about Rashad Penny over Swift. I have him statted for a better season. And Brant, I know you were right on pace with that. So what do you think of me having Swift as a bust?
Absolutely. You're drafting a guy to be an RB1 that's not even probably an RB1 on his team. We know he's not the best rusher on his team because the best rusher on his team is underneath the center. So you know he's not the best rusher. I don't believe he's the RB1. I've watched Penny, like you said, since he came out. The day he got drafted into Seattle, I went back. I watched him film back in San Diego State. The guy is very explosive. You saw what he can do when he is healthy. And now he gets to go behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL too. That's all he's going to do is be able to show his explosive ability. There's no way. I just don't see any way that Swift lives up to it. Even if Penny gets hurt in week 2, I still don't think you can give enough love to Swift to finish as an RB13 with everyone else that's creeping around in the backfield and Gainwell and all that and Jalen Hurts. I can't draft him at a ceiling. You'll be lucky if this man finishes in the RB2 range.
Absolutely agree.
So now the other one here is a guy that might ruffle a few more feathers. I know that you went on a little rant about him last week, about this position last week, and that is Mark Andrews. He's going as the second tight end off the board, which he's finished there, which is fine. He's going in the 4th round. Sorry. I'm not getting on board with drafting a tight end that's not named Travis Kelce, as you said last week. I'm not getting on board with drafting one that early. But let's look at the last 2 years. Name me wide receivers that have actually played more than probably 6 games in the last 2 years for the Baltimore Ravens. You probably have Bateman, maybe had 6 games last year, maybe. And Duvernay. And who?
Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, okay, exactly. So this year, Mark Andrews is no longer the only thing there. They went out, they added a great guy that is over the middle, great speedster that they drafted in Zay Flowers, which you and me both absolutely love coming out of this draft. He'll be taking some of that middle work away from Mark Andrews. Then you got the guy that probably runs one of the best slant routes and has the ability to take a slant route to the house anytime he catches that, and that's OBJ. Now, I'm not saying OBJ is going to be your wide receiver 1 and all that. That's another man that I still to this day believe he's living off of the hype of a 1 catch. Yes, he's had some good seasons, but he's still getting paid for that 1 good catch. But you go out, Bateman's getting healthy. He's out. And Lamar Jackson, the running back, Lamar Jackson's out there working with Zay Flowers and OBJ in the offseason outside of the facility. Mark Andrews isn't there. I get it. Mark Andrews already has that connection. How can you live up to the tight end 2 in the 4th round as a tight end when there's so many more bodies, so many more mouths to feed? The last 2 years, you have been the only mouth to feed in that offense more than, you got to think the running backs was hurt. The wide receivers were hurt. They were out there playing with the backup quarterback for quite a bit. Mark Andrews is not that guy. And hats off if you decide that you want to draft a tight end in the 3rd and 4th round, but I don't think Mark Andrews can hang up those numbers that he has been hanging up with all those other mouths to feed this year.
Yeah, Brant, anybody who listened to our pod last week knows my stance on this one, so I don't need to go ahead and necessarily, plant that flag again when it's already been planted. But outside of Travis Kelce, I'll punt on the position. I'll draft a few later. You were our champion in our dynasty league last year, our home dynasty league, Brant, and you did that with David Njoku, Dallas Goedert, and
Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst, yes. You rode the Ferris wheel of borderline RB or tight end 1, tight end 2 guys, and it worked out for you. So that, you're living proof that you don't have to have a tight end over the top to win a dynasty league. So, again, if it's not Travis Kelce for me, I'm not paying the premium. Now, if that premium comes down and you start talking about, Mark Andrews or, Pat Fryermuth in the 7th, 8th round, then maybe I could be convinced to be interested. But at the current market rate, I'm out on tight ends unless it's a tight end premium.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one guy that you could pivot to is a guy that had a down year. I'm going to give this one out. He's going as the 95th player off the board. Darren Waller. You could just pivot to that guy. I honestly believe that he could, in that offense, he could be hanging the same numbers you see from Mark Andrews.
Sure. All right, Brent, I've got the last bust to bring us home with this week. And this is a guy that, again, I've been very down on almost his entire career, maybe to a fault because he's had some very good seasons in his career. But that is Juju Smith-Schuster. Left from 1 year in Kansas City and is now in New England with Mac Jones. So there's a big strike against you, in my opinion. You're going from catching passes from the greatest quarterback playing right now to a guy I'm not sure will be starting under center next season in Mac Jones, Brant. So last year in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, he had a 17.4 target share and an average depth of target of 7.6 yards. Here's the stat that is just insane to me, Brant. So if you remember when I talked about Nico Collins and his 50% of catchable ball rate, Juju Smith-Schuster was thrown 101 targets last year. He 0.1. That is a very, very high catch rate. Out of that rate, Brant, which again is saying that all but like 8.9% of his balls thrown to him out of 101, so that should mean somewhere around 92, 93 catchable balls, he only caught 77% of his targets. That is not good. So now you're going from catching 77% of very good thrown balls to you from Patrick Mahomes to a lower catch rate of balls coming to you from Mac Jones, where there is no Travis Kelce to play interference on the defense and keep them busy. They're going to be solely focused on Juju. He's the best thing in town right now, unless D-Hop gets added. I am completely out on Juju Smith-Schuster. I want no pass catchers in New England at this point, Brant. The only exception to that could be if DeAndre Hopkins comes to town.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree with you. I unfortunately do have stock in Juju, and I've been trying to work my way to make sure that he's on my bench for the majority of the year or a bye week fill-in. That's about the only place I feel comfortable with starting him this year. I understand he's the one there, but we've never really seen him thrive as a one. When he was in Pittsburgh, he was the two when he had his best few years. When he went to Kansas City, Travis Kelce's the one. Everyone could say, well, yeah, Juju's the wide receiver one there. Yeah, he's right. But Kelce, just because he has two different letters in front of his names doesn't mean anything. He's still a wide receiver. Right. So, yeah, I'm all out. I'm all out on most pass catchers. Maybe if D-Hop goes there, maybe I can jump back in a little bit onto the Juju because he will be the number two there. But I just can't get behind it, especially when I believe that I think you hit the nail on the head when Bailey Zappi is going to be the quarterback by probably week 8 this year.
There's a chance, right? There were some fans calling for that to happen last year. So, and it's Bill Belichick. He keeps us on his toes. We are on our toes when it comes to the fantasy world. We never know what to expect in New England, right, Brant?
Absolutely. Absolutely. New England's a backfield and a quarterback situation that is always a little rough to handle out there.
Not always. Tom Brady made it pretty easy for quite a while, but yes, since it's been murky. But when you're used to a Ferrari like Tom Brady, and then you get handed the keys to a 1996 Honda Accord, you feel a little different sometimes.
Honda Civic.
Could be whatever. So anyway, Brant, I think that wraps us up for our breakouts and our busts. Again, be paying attention to that page because that underdog stuff's going to be coming to the spotlight here soon, and it's going to be a very fun deal. So look forward to hearing about that. And Brant and I will be back at you same time, same place next week.
Yeah, and as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.